same time using the exact same link as the previous week. And Firuz has told me that for this week, for the first time, we have the link for the previous week's Thursday Fireside in the chat. Firuz, you may want to put it in the chat again now for the new people that came in late.
Sure.
So that week, last week's Thursday Fireside was titled The Baha'i Faith and the Enlightenment. And if you are interested, please click on the link and go and watch that. The second thing is, as you may have just noticed, these meetings are being recorded, but there is a spotlight on the speaker only, and it is only for the formal portion of the Thursday Fireside. The recording will be stopped for the question and answer period of the Fireside. If you wish, please feel free to leave your emails in the chat box for Firuz to email you the weekly topics and a reminder of the Thursday Firesides. And alternatively, if you do not want to leave your emails publicly in the chat box, Firuz will also put her email in there, and feel free to privately email her outside of the Fireside in order to receive those reminders. Should any of you have any questions or comments that you think of during the song, during the talk, or at any other point in the meeting, please wait until after everything is finished, and you may then send it in chat, and we will ensure that they are addressed by our speaker. And lastly, thank you all for sitting through that. Please make sure that we are all muted during the talk so that there are no interruptions. And now, without further ado, is Jack Lenz in the call?
You can call him. Probably not. Maybe Tara can say a prayer, and by then Jack would have arrived.
Okay. And then afterwards, I will also introduce him.
And then yes, Tara. Tara?
Hello, عزیزم با منی؟
No, I'm talking to Tara.
من فکر کردم گفتی شاهرخ.
No. Shahla Jun, welcome. Tara, go ahead.
به نام گوینده توانا ای پسرش خوش ساحتی ساحت هستی اگر اندر آیی و نیکو بساطی است بساط باقی اگر از ملک فانی برتر خرامی و ملیح است نشاط مستی اگر ساغر مانی از ید غلام الهی بیا شامی اگر به این مراتب فائز شوی از نیستی و فنا و و محنت و خطا فارغ گردی.
Thank you again, Tara. Beautiful as always. Thank you so much. So for tonight, everyone, I have the honor of introducing our speaker, Mr. Jack Lenz. He is an acclaimed composer, producer, and musical director. He is a piano player from Saskatchewan, and he feels very lucky to have made a life out of music. He is the happy father of 7 wonderful children and is now in his 70s. And he hopes to spread the great news and big ideas of the Baha'i Faith through music. Throughout his prolific career, Mr. Jack Lenz has composed music for motion pictures, television, documentaries, and much more. His passion for music, television, film, and the arts has translated into a thriving business as well, called Lenz Entertainment. Jack Lenz is also a passionate humanitarian, dedicated to inspiring children and supporting children's charities in Canada. And we're really in for a treat tonight with a musical fireside, where the topic is "This is the End of War." Now I'm going to check again. Is Jack Lenz in the call, or is he still, are we still waiting a little?
You know, Milan John, they say that the more you wait for something, the more delicious that would become. I think I think Jack is going to be here very soon, but I don't think he is here now. So I know that we asked Milan to come and introduce our speaker, but he has so many things to do. Milan John, are you tight with time? Do you have to go?
I'm all right to sit in the meeting for a bit. I'm actually okay. Thank you though, Faraz. That's very kind of you.
Okay, okay. May we ask the friends if anybody else would like to say another prayer? Tara, by the way, people are writing left and right for you in the chat. Maybe another Portuguese. They say maybe we can ask Tara to chant another prayer. I'm just reading the chat, and I'm completely innocent in that. Tara John.
We're very lucky to have such a musical fireside tonight.
ای پروردگار روزگار این محفل به ذکر تو آراسته و این جمع توجه به ملکوت تو نموده دلها پر مسرت است و جانها در نهایت بشارت خداوند مهربانا این جمع را شادمان کن و در ملکوت خویش کامران فرما گناه ببخش پناه بده آگاه کن و به بارگاه ملکوت درآ تویی دهنده تویی بخشنده و مهربان عبدالبها عباس
Thank you so much, Tara. That was beautiful again. Now I have received word that Mr. Lenz has entered the call, which is fantastic. So once again, the topic for tonight is "This is the End of War." And Mr. Lenz, if there are no problems, I'll turn it over to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that is perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I appreciate your patience today. It was one of those days where I don't think I've had a day like this in probably years. But last night my wife was complaining of a stomachache, and it was pretty tough pain. So we took her into emergency at North York General, and they found out that her appendix was quite swollen, and there was an infection around the appendix. And so they did surgery at midnight last night. So I got out of there about 5:30 this morning, and I wasn't even thinking about what day it was. So my apologies. It's just been an upside down kind of day. but I'm glad to be here with you, and this is an actual great way to end a day like today. So we were just at the hospital with her, and Farouz called me at 7:05 and said, "Where are you?" In the nicest way, as only Farouz could do. So I appreciate it very much. And first of all, I'd like to know who all is here with us tonight. Is an exhaustive list of people, or is it a reasonable sized group? Tell me where everybody's from in a nutshell, if you don't mind.
84 so far.
84. Well, amazing. Okay,
Quite a large list, yes.
that's a great group. Okay.
It means that it's very important that I stayed this late. For you.
Oh, you're very kind, Mary. So,
And it should be mentioned as well, Jack, that we have people from all around the world here, not just Canada.
wonderful. Okay, well, I won't ask everybody to introduce themselves because that'll take an hour. So I'll just tell you that I've been thinking a lot about this title because I just wrote a song for the 40th anniversary of the execution of the 10 women in 1983 in June 18th, 1983. And, you know, our Baha'i friends know very much about the significance of this event. And for our friends here who are, you know, interested in the Baha'i teachings or interested in spiritual matters, this was an extraordinary event in which 10 women, teenagers to grandmothers, were all executed on the same evening in a place called Chowga in Shiraz. It was like a soccer stadium kind of thing, and a football field. And so that happened 4 years after the revolution in Iran, which seems like forever ago now, since it's more than 40 years since the revolution occurred in Iran. But what's fascinating about these women is that, you know, they were part of a group of 90 people who'd been arrested in Shiraz at the time. And it became a kind of a signature international event because at one point, the story was so widespread that the president of the United States, President Reagan at the time, actually asked for mercy for these people. He said that they were no threat to the government of Iran. They were peaceful citizens. They were not political. And of course, that was in early May of that year, 1983, 40 years ago. And on May 29th, which is a significant event for Baha'is because it's the commemoration of the ascension of the prophet, founder of the Baha'i Faith, Baha'u'llah. On May 29th, Khomeini gave a speech to his generals in Tehran and said that Reagan's plea was just proof that these people were spies for the United States, and of course they were spies for Israel, and they were, you know, as the women used to joke in prison, do these countries like Britain and the United States and Israel have any idea how many out of commission spies they have in these prisons in Iran? Because of course it was just a complete lie. And these people were innocent women who were charged for crimes like teaching children's classes. 7 of them were not married, 7 of the 10, and they were charged with not being married, if you can imagine. But the worst part of it is that these were highly educated women, and women who in our country and in many countries of the world would have been celebrated for their accomplishments. But in their country, they were executed for their accomplishments. Because God forbid a person should have a great education and not rote learning in Islam that the mullahs promote. And that has nothing to do with contemporary advancement of civilization or science or anything. And it's just so unthinkable. But anyway, it continues on. And now the women of Iran have really stood up to that extremely cruel regime and have really shown such incredible bravery to be able to say this is not what they want. They don't want morality police. They don't want that cruel, torturous, murderous form of Islam that the mullahs promote. So, it's quite significant. And so I wanted to read you this lyric because I actually have to finish this song tonight and have it recorded tomorrow. So there's a very funny story about Sammy Khan, who used to, they would say he was a very famous American songbook songwriter. And they used to ask him what came first, the music or the lyrics, right? And he would always say the phone call. So I got this phone call to write a song, and I have to present it tomorrow to a bunch of people in New York. And so you can wish me well. But the verses say, the theme of this 40th anniversary is our story is one. I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but this is just our group. Our story is one, which connects what's going on with the women of Iran and these women who sacrificed their lives 40 years ago this June. So the lyric says, you say we should not leave one single human behind. You say we should find all the love we can find, show every kindness and more. This is the true end to war. You say that women will lead us. Please tell us more. You say that women are brave and will lead us to peace. You say there's finally an end to this beast. The world needs your tenderness more. This could be the true end of war. You say these women will lead us. Please tell us more. And the chorus is sort of a little bit more of slogans maybe, but it was the best idea I could get for the limited time I've had. The chorus says, our story is one. Our story is not done. Women for justice, women for equality, women for unity in one world. Our story is one. And then there's a reference to these 10 women. And I took some of the ideas from a song I'd written with Jimmy Seals called Traces, because I've always loved these verses, but I originally suggested this song, but they felt it was a little bit too Baha'i like in its language. So I tried to make it more general. You say there were 10 women, and 10 is the number of souls. You say that 10 is the number of graves where flowers grow. We hear their voices so proud and strong. We know we must carry on. You say these women will lead us. Our story is one. Verse 4 says, you say that red, yes, red is the color they wear. You say that death is the shadow that was never there. They left their traces in the sun. And now we know we are one. Yes, our story is one, and our story is not done. Women for justice, women for equality, women for unity in one world. Our story is one. And then the last verse is very quiet, where it says, you say there are millions of women to take up this cause, brave women of Iran who will stand for the cause. They leave their traces in the sun, and now we know we are one. You say these women will lead us, and our story is one. And then chorus repeats, yes, our story is one, and our story is not done. Women for justice, women for equality, women for unity in one world, our story is one. So I promise that if we actually get this done tomorrow, I'll send you a copy, Farouz, and you can distribute. And let's hope it turns out well. It's always a bit of a journey, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this idea of this line that says that this is the true end to war. Because no one in human history has ever been able to say, with the exception of no one has been able to say, with the exception of Baha'u'llah, and he actually said this to a Westerner who met with him in the early 1890s, where he said that these wars will end. he said, these ruinous wars will end. And so I think it's really important to be able to say that, what is it that can keep this promise? What power is it that can keep this promise? And so that's what I want to talk about, but I also want to play some songs. And you'll forgive me if I forget the occasional lyric. I'm 73 and they seem to be disappearing slowly. So this is an old song, but I've always can you hear the piano okay?
Not really well.
No.
Really well or not really well?
Not really well.
Okay. So I'm going to try to bring it up a little bit. Sometimes it's weird that you get this a cancellation of the frequencies depending on the settings so can you hear my voice in piano, or is the piano sort of soft?
Piano's in the background a bit.
Yeah.
And it's a bit choppy.
Okay. So if you don't mind, just because it's not going to be much fun to listen to it if it's not right, on the mute button, there's a setting that says, it's like a MacBook. Do we have, I know that I know that the young woman who was chanting, it was very beautiful, had very good settings. And so maybe I'll ask audio settings. Should say output volume and input level and microphone. Automatically adjust microphone volume. High fidelity music mode.
Jack, may I share with the friends while you're fixing it?
Sure.
The story of Mona, which you and Seals and Crofts came to Toronto to do that?
Yes.
Are
I
you
would love that.
okay? Seals and Crofts and Jack, they came to Toronto and they wanted to record the very beautiful song about Mona and the children.
Yes,
And I think,
yes, we remember.
yeah, you can find it on YouTube. And Jack was there. Somebody else who was there that is not here anymore is Mrs. Aklas Javid, and she played her mother.
Yes.
And I just happened to be there. And I tell you, it was just so majestically beautiful that, Jack, do you remember that?
Of course I do, Farouz. It was really one of the highlights of my Baha'i life, because it was so extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit that was there, Mary, you remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So
We should all mute, right? So we can hear.
Yes.
Everybody
please.
else mute?
yeah.
Thank you so much.
That can be helpful. Okay, so the song goes like this, and this is from a quote of Abdul Baha, where he says, when you have a thought of war, he says you should oppose it with a stronger thought of peace. He says when you have a thought of hatred, you should oppose it with a stronger thought of love. He says that the reality of human beings is their thought. So how is it that we can use thought to overcome so much negativity in the world and so much negative emotion? And he gives us this clue. He says, when you have those thoughts, when you have a thought of war, oppose that thought with a thought of peace. That we actually have this power, and we have that power amplified if we tune into this great spirit, the Holy Spirit that's available to us, if we will open our hearts and our minds to it. So this is how the song goes. When you have a thought of war, oppose it with stronger thought of peace. When you have the thought of hate, oppose it with a stronger thought of love. When you have a thought of greed, oppose it with a stronger thought of selflessness. You will hear the voice of freedom calling, calling. Why don't you try peace for a while? We can't always go back. We can't always go back to war. Why not try peace for a while?
Jack,
We can't always go back. We can't always go back to. I hope never.
Jack, you might want to do this again. The voice, I don't think it was good. And they said that unfortunately, people didn't hear it well.
Okay, so I don't know. I use these same settings most of the time, and I do a fair amount of this, so I'm not sure what's not working right.
So
So
right now we can hear you very well when you're talking to us, but when
Right.
you,
Okay.
When
So
you're
is
facing the piano, it's not as clear for sure.
so is the piano too loud?
No, it's not loud at all.
Yeah, and so you can't hear the piano or the voice.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm just looking for input volume here because so when I'm talking like this, it's fine.
Yes.
It's perfect.
But if I play here, you can't hear the voice.
Yeah, we can
That's
hear the
right.
voice if you're facing the camera.
And can you hear the piano still now, or is it very low?
Not well.
Wow, because where I am, it's balanced, but obviously there's something wrong. And let me try this setting and see what it's like, okay? When you have a thought of war, oppose it with a stronger thought of peace. Can you hear the both now or not?
Not well,
No.
Chuck, not well.
Okay.
So you almost need a microphone near the piano somehow.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna open
Jack,
it.
sorry, just on your screen, on top, on the left corner, it says original sound for musicians. Maybe if that's on, that would make the quality better.
Yeah, that's what I had it on.
Oh.
That's what's so weird.
Look at her happy face.
Output level, input level. Okay, so for some reason I'm not seeing output level, but I am seeing input level. But if you're hearing my voice normally, like when I'm talking now, then that's
Very clear, yeah.
that's what I can't understand. Is it? So I'm going to open up the top of the piano and see if it helps.
Jack, no matter what, you have to promise to come back very soon.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
That's an acoustic piano, eh, Jack?
No, it's actually an electric, but it has speakers inside here.
Oh, okay.
Usually you can hear it fine, but I'll move this over like this a little bit. So point it more towards the piano and see if it'll pick it up. Okay, so I'm just going to try this now and see how this works. When you have thought of war, oppose it with a stronger thought.
No.
Unfortunately, it's worse. Unfortunately, it's worse.
What, it's worse?
Yeah, I'd
Yes.
say worse.
Okay, well, you know what I'll do? I'll come back another time and I'll get my son to set it up, because it's funny, I've been doing Zooms for 2 years and it's always been fine.
Huh.
But it's probably just the nature of today, because
Yes.
going in for a surgery for my wife at midnight, and not it was supposed to be a 1 hour operation. And I'll just tell you this story because it's instructive. It's instructive about our medical system, which I feel really blessed for, because we have a severely disabled child and we've had such amazing care for her through 27 years now.
Wow.
That just, I don't know any other country in the world, maybe Norway, maybe Germany, but the level of care for her has been so extraordinary. However, I think for elderly people, it's not so extraordinary, because when you go through emergency, and this was first experience for my wife, because she's never had surgery before. When we got there at noon, and I knew it was appendicitis. All the symptoms were there. Every symptom was there. And I said to the person when we went in, I said, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I'm sure this is appendicitis and it's an emergency. This is an emergency. This is an emergency hospital that we're in, and she needs to see somebody immediately. And 10 hours later, we had somebody agree with that diagnosis. But by that time, the appendix had burst and she was already in sepsis. So it was shocking to me, because there were 50 people waiting to be seen, but there were only 3 people who were really urgent. You could see that they were urgent, because one woman was struggling to breathe, and I know she was having heart trouble. And there was another fellow who had an accident, was pretty badly cut. But those were the only 3. The rest of everybody, could have waited for those 3 people, right? They could have waited, but they don't, because it's this democracy system of we take you on a system, doesn't matter how sick you are. And because of that, a 1 hour surgery turned into a 3 hour surgery. And now they're dealing with an infection that's terribly serious. And we just don't know what's going to happen, because this spread through her whole, all through her whole system now. And so it was shocking to me, but it was also instructive, because I had to balance that with the idea that we have this 27-year-old girl who's completely, well, she's basically catatonic, and she's survived 27 years when she was only supposed to survive 3, according to all the medical advice we got. And she's still with us, and still the angel of the house. And then then you raise all these things, bring the big questions of life, which is, are we looking after the most vulnerable? Most of us are relatively healthy. We have the advantage of either having good genes, or maybe we've looked after ourselves and we've had good habits, and so we're generally well. But there's a whole population out there which is so vulnerable, and those are the people that we really need to look after. We need to look after the elderly. We need to look after the disabled. We need to look after people, and that how we look after them is an emblem or a symbol of a better society, right? In Germany, for example, if you have a child like our daughter Mercy, the government pays you money to look after them, because they'd rather be paying you than be having her in care with people where it might cost them more. I mean, it makes sense, right? So the whole idea of a true end to war war is not just conflict between countries. War is conflict between ideologies. War is conflict between the kind of society that we would love to have and we think everyone should have, which is what Baha'u'llah said that he desired, but the happiness of the nations. Can you imagine? we're a long way from happiness, friends. And happiness is based on justice, he says, based on treating everybody well and having compassion and having care for the ones that really need it. And so, you know, I just feel like we're ignoring the vulnerable in many ways. We don't support them enough. We don't have a society which supports them well enough. But it's better than a lot of places, and a lot of places have no care for these people. So I really feel like we need to look at what we think human beings are, and human beings are. And this is also fundamental to the Baha'i teachings. Human beings are spiritual beings. They're not. Every single person has a soul, and every soul transcends death. And so when every soul transcends death, how does it do that? How does it fare when there's so little emphasis on spirituality in the society? And so I'm fascinated with and always have been is that, and I have to tell you, I had this experience recently working in Vienna, and I went to one of the homes of Mozart in Vienna. And in Mozart's home, the one I went to, there's a whole room dedicated to his writings about death. And it's really interesting because he said that he had come to peace with death, and he realized that it was the most important thing in life, and that he was no longer afraid of it. He said that he had realized that death was this transition from this world that was the transition into reality and into the real world. So he wrote so eloquently about it. It was really amazing to see. You can look up Mozart's quotes on death, and you'll find them really, really inspiring. So this world here, Baha'u'llah says, is like a matrix to the next world. This is a world where we are being prepared as if we were children in a womb, in a matrix, being prepared for a life to come. That is everything that Christ said in his prayer, where he said, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So you think about that you think about this beautiful prayer and this promise of Christ, that the next world, he says, is a world that we should be exemplifying here. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So this world that every soul transcends this life and takes with it its qualities, its memory, its consciousness of this reality of the soul. And this soul has the capacity to manifest all the attributes of its creator. So while the child in the womb is growing arms and legs and ears and eyes and all of those things, which it doesn't seem evident for what its use would be in the womb if it stayed in that dark and narrow world, we are in a matrix of the development of the senses that we will need for the next world. Kindness, compassion, love, generosity, fairness, justice, contribution, perceiving others as yourself. As Baha'u'llah says, even preferring others to yourself. These are the qualities, he says, that if we develop these qualities here, then we are in a condition in the next world where we will have powers and qualities that will allow us to have an enduring, not just influence, but an enduring happiness and joy in the world beyond this world. And the reason that we lack this happiness here is because it's not connected to those things. It's not. Our happiness here is so transient and concerned with pleasure. And there's a great story from when Abdu'l-Baha was in London. He actually created this kind of scenario where he said, and this was a dialogue between the prophets and humanity. And he said, the humanity comes to the prophet and says, we're really enjoying ourselves here. We're having a lovely time. We love to eat, we sleep, we have entertainment, we do all these things that we love so much. And then you come along and say, those things aren't necessarily good for you. Those things, well, we're going to teach you about the concept of hope and reward, and then we're going to teach you about a punishment, right? We're going to give you these sort of, signposts that you can work in between, and you can measure how you're doing based on these qualities, right? So humanity then complains again and says, when we didn't know about all that stuff, when we didn't know about the reward and punishment thing, we were just very happy without all of that. That's kind of like the garden of ignorance. and why do we have to do all that? And he says, the prophet responds, he says, I really want you to think about this because, you're kind of living in darkness, and I want you to live in light. You're kind of living in as animals, and I want you to be humans. I don't want you to be animals anymore. I want you to be like really human, right? What's human? So it's this incredible dialogue. And he says, I want you to come out of the darkness into the light of spirituality. I want you to put all the things that you think are really good for you and weigh them in accordance with these ideas. Even though you don't like that I'm telling you this stuff, that's what I want you to figure out. That's what I want you to learn, so that you'll become humans, not animals. And it's such an incredible distinction, that we get to make. And why? So, I have to tell you about probably the worst fireside I've ever done. I always like to tell this story because I really, generally, you can communicate ideas and you can have a dialogue with people, and Zoom isn't exactly a great environment to do that either. But I went on a teaching trip to Croatia and Slovenia and Italy with all the kids. Everybody came. And I did little concerts, except they were much more successful than this because everybody could hear the piano and hear the voice. So but we'll fix that for the next time. But what I want to tell you is that Manaz Alai, Bayankor, who was an old friend, and she and David were pioneers in Slovenia, Baha'i pioneers. That's where they go and they try to help establish a community. Anyway, so they said, we have all these interesting people coming from the university, and it should be a very interesting meeting. And, just do what you do, sing a few songs, talk a little bit about the Baha'i ideals. And so they were a pretty quiet group. They didn't say a lot. But I said something which really got them excited. And that's when I said that I understood from everything that I'd read that humans were the highest form of life because they represented self-consciousness. They represented being aware of themselves, and therefore they could transform their environments. They could fly in the air. They could do all. Anyway, that was my first mistake, according to this group of scientists from a university in Ljubljana, because they said very quickly, you know, that was mistaken. I was not right about that. And so my approach is, and I think generally, you don't get into arguments. It doesn't serve any purpose. And especially about religion, you know, our teachings even say that if people are arguing about religion, they're both wrong. Right. So I tried to sort of change the subject, but the subject wasn't to be changed. And my kids are sitting there and they're looking at me and they're going like this, like, stop. And I couldn't stop. And I said, you know, so who do you think then is a more evolved form than humans? Well, the answer was very fast. Dolphins. Dolphins are far more evolved than humans. And so I decided I would just ask a question. It was just a question. I said, so when's the last time that you sort of saw a dolphin civilization? You know, do they have art galleries? Do they have concerts? Like, do they have stuff that, you know, that they enjoy as part of dolphin civilization? And I said it in all sincerity, but all hell broke loose, because then it was sort of like I was making fun of them. No, I wasn't making fun. I was asking a question, just a question. So it goes down, it never got better. And poor man Oz and David, you know, they had all these young professors there from the university, and they're looking at me thinking, how did this happen? What did you do? Like, you know, so I played one more song and I said, thank you so much for coming. And, you know, happy to chat with you afterwards individually. Like, let's take this offline, because it was just getting worse, right? So my kids constantly remind me of this. They say, Dad, you know, like whenever I'm going to do a talk, they say, Dad, is it going to be like Ljubljana? Is it going to be the dolphin talk you're giving? So I say to them, you know, there are a few things that are really controversial in the Baha'i Faith. You know, people are going to find fault with everything, especially in a culture like ours, which is extremely judgmental. And I wasn't being judgmental about the dolphins. I was just trying to point out that they didn't really have a civilization, and they didn't really have prophets, and they didn't really have, I don't know, critical race theory. There was nothing. You know, dolphins just haven't done much. They're very adorable, and especially Flipper. I thought Flipper was very intelligent. And anyway, so I just thought, you know, the one thing that I could have said was that really would have kind of set them off, but I didn't say it, is that, you know, everything has a spirit. We know that. Everything, like there's a mineral spirit, there's an animal spirit, there's a vegetable spirit. But I don't think, based on everything that I've read, not just in the Baha'i teachings, but generally throughout religious teachings, I don't think that animals continue on into a next world. So I said to my kids, do you think I should have gone there? Should I have said that? And they said, oh, Dad, you're so lucky you didn't say that. You are really lucky that you didn't say that, because that would have just really been bad, right? So I think that the true end to war, and I'll close by saying this, that the true end to war is really to understand what a human being is, to really understand the spiritual nature of human beings, and that all the questions that we have, all the doubts that we have, all the things that we wonder about. And I think as you get older, you actually think more about death than you do when you're young. I don't know if, can I have a yay barely on that? You know,
Yay.
Yay. Yay.
Yay. And having a near-death experience with my wife last night was really shocking to me, because they basically said, look, we're not sure after they came out of surgery. They said this infection is pretty serious. And she's in a critical care unit. She's wired up and now tubes all over the place. And the kids wanted to see her tonight. And they basically said, they called she's kind of bossy. And they said, Mom, you're not very bossy. Like you're looking pretty, your color's better than it was when the day before. But they said you're not very bossy, and you got to come back here, and we need the boss. So I thought, oh boy, you just don't know what life's going to bring, right? None of us know. But it's good to be prepared. And I say this to my kids all the time. You should accustom yourself to hardship. You should be thankful for adversity, because adversity is a great trainer. And 27 years with this girl who has 10 to 15 grand mal seizures a day, who suffers more than anybody I've ever seen suffer. You have to have a port in the storm, right? You have to have something you can rely on through really difficult times. So I'll just tell you one other story, which I really love.
Jack, I just wanted to interrupt you before you say something else. People are writing to me as I am keeping you here by force, and they're saying, Gurus, let him go. We can hear that he's worried. Don't keep him here one more minute. We want to say long healing. And I'm just so innocent here. So do you want to address this issue?
Yes, I do, because, there's something wonderful that Baha'u'llah says. He says, when you're with the friends, he says, the friends of God, he says, you are in the presence of God. The impact of that statement has been really so much a part of my life for so many years. The greatest highlights of my life have been in the presence of the friends, right? So I just love this. And I just want to tell you a story about mercy, because this is, I call this the only time where I feel like I've actually practiced spiritual subterfuge. And I know those words don't even go together. Like you're supposed to be just honest, and you're supposed to do things in life where everything is really upfront and honest. And it's a really difficult quality to have, especially when you have a wild imagination. So I want to tell you that Shorey, I got to work with Shorey Agdashlu a couple of times. And she told me that in Tehran, she used to love going after school with her friends. This was under the Shah in the early 70s. And I'm sure many of our Iranian friends will remember those days. And she used to go after school with her friends and go, visit other friends and just have a lovely time. And she'd get a little distracted, and she'd forget that she was supposed to be home. So she'd arrive home late for dinner, and her parents would be very concerned, right? Because, she's a girl, she's a teen, she should be at home by this time. And she said she got to making up these stories. She would always have some story, like, today it was, I just didn't know what to do, Mom and Dad. The Shah and his entourage were there, and the traffic was stopped, and I couldn't even get across the street to get home. So I just went and waited till it was all over, and then I came home. And her father said, Shorey, someday you will be an amazing actress. He says, because your stories have so much imagination in them. I'm sure that that's where you're going to be. So my father used to say that if I saw a rabbit in the backyard, it was a kangaroo. Right? And I think that's why active imaginations are a challenge for people. But I really was thinking about this the other day, because, our daughter can't speak. She can't see, she can't speak. She has no way of communicating, but she's just beautiful, amazing, pure soul. So this morning, after I got home from the hospital, I went into her room, which is really like a a sanctified place. Because my wife isn't a Baha'i. In name, she's not a Baha'i, but in many ways, she's a Baha'i. And so we have this practice that in the Baha'i Faith, which is a really interesting spiritual practice. And I love the practice, and I especially love doing it with my daughter, where you say the greatest name, which is Allah, which means God is most glorious. So, it's just a way of acknowledging that how glorious God is. And when you look at the immensity of the creation, and you look at the beauty of life, and you look at all of the amazing beauty of nature, you just say to yourself, what an incredible, majestic, glorious reality that is, that could create all of this. And lots of people will say, and especially today, oh, there was a big explosion and bang, it was all there. And Kurt Vonnegut, who's a wonderful writer, said, that's about as likely as a hurricane blowing through a metal scrapyard and forming a perfect Boeing 707. Always love that imagery. So, science, religion, eventually it's got to work together. Like, we have to find a way to harmonize these powerful forces, knowledge, revealed knowledge from religion, discovered knowledge from science. Baha'u'llah says they have to be like lovers that embrace, right? Like the East and West, like science and revelation, or science and spirituality. So anyway, I practice this thing where I say the 95 of these Allahu Akbars in succession with my daughter. Partly because she's a pure soul and I'm not, right? So I help her with these things and say them with her, then surely it's going to have some effect on this frail human being that I am. So I've come to love that practice with her. And the best thing about it all is now I get Deborah to do it every morning. And she says them with us. And I know that the reason that she does that is because this little pure soul has this impact, right? Just brings that spirit, that love of God, that feeling of wonder and majesty, of awe that we hold for the Creator. It brings that. Her pure spirit brings that. And so I tried one other thing that I thought would be really good, because, we're supposed to say these obligatory prayers every day, and there are 3 of them. There's a long one, a middle one, and a short one. And these are spiritual practices that we need in order to develop our souls, right? They've been part of religion through history, prayer and fasting, the sun and moon of religion. And so, even though these are not common practices in our society, just go and spend Ramadan in Morocco, and everybody's fasting and everybody's praying, the whole country, right? It's really incredible. And in many countries, this is a way of life. But here it's sort of like, you're really gonna talk about God? You're really gonna talk about, back to our discussion about crime and punishment, or punishment and reward, or hope of reward and fear of punishment, and the prophet humanity dialogue. But we really need this, and I really need it, and I really love the spirit that it brings, and I love how our daughter does that. So the one little thing I'm concerned about, and maybe you can help me with this, is I say to Deborah, look, Mercy can't say that noonday prayer, so I want you to say it for her. And it's so interesting because she loves saying it, and after all the years that we've been saying it together, she doesn't. She still hasn't memorized it, right? It's such a short prayer. It just says, I bear witness, oh my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. There's knowledge and love to know thee and to worship thee. I testify at this moment to my powerlessness and to thy might, to my poverty and to thy wealth. There is none other God but thee, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. So I say it, and then she repeats it. And, you know, it could be subterfuge. I do think sometimes I may be taking advantage of her and using the fact that Mercy can't say it as a way to get her to say it. But at the same time, I know what spirit it brings. And some days I don't feel as good about it. But after seeing her today and seeing how in such a short time, within 24 hours, a person can face not living anymore because of a useless little thing that we have in our body. And of course, I've been thinking about what did people do for centuries when there was no medicine, when there was no way of treating this, you know? Did they just die? Because that's what would happen if it ruptured. You just die if you don't fix it. So it's been such an interesting day. And I really felt like all those short prayers that she said with Mercy would have such a wonderful influence on her soul. So that's, I know that doesn't have a lot to do with the true end to war, but it actually does. Because if we as human beings were to develop these qualities, we would no longer be in a situation where we would carry violence to the extremes that we do. We would have peace and harmony. We would have the quality that Christ promised, that this world would reflect the next world, the beauty, the joy, the peace, all of these things. So that's why the Baha'i Faith, in a sense, yes, of course it's a religion, but the object of life for a Baha'i is to promote the oneness of the human family and to bring about this spiritual change in the whole population of the world. 7 billion people being transformed by spiritual teachings that if they were to utilize them, could end all of this conflict. Anyway, I'll end it there. And I so appreciate your kind wishes. I appreciate that you're concerned, but this is really, I'm so glad I got to do this today, because it really was a little bit of healing for me too. Thank you.
Jack, it is my turn right now. I want you to know this has been one of the best fireside we have had for the past 2 years. And I want you to know that Aqdas Khanum is here.
Yes.
And also I wanted you to know that the friends wanted to say long healing prayer for your wife, but because it is so lengthy, I would like to ask them to choose the short healing prayer, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind. Sure, that's sweet.
And last but not the least, if I was a good Persian friend, I would have made polo and adas for you and brought it to your home and drop it off for you and your children. Shame on me. You can just send me your address and that will be done.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. But please, you know, you mentioning Akdas to me, I went and had the wonderful joy of going and playing at Akdas's firesides that were just legendary as a way of not just meeting new people, but having the experience of her level of just spirit that she brought. And I just have to tell you one funny story, and I promise I'll stop. But every time Deborah would come with me, or even when she didn't come with me to the firesides, Akdas would always send her flowers. And I know you know what's coming, but in the flowers there'd always be a little card, and Deborah would open the card, and there would be, we used to have them, I don't think we have them anymore, a little declaration card, right? A little yellow card, and she would say, I hope Deborah will sign this card and join our community. And and I loved it. And Deborah didn't feel any offense from it at all. She thought it was very sweet that Akdas cared so much about her that she would send these flowers and the little card in the flowers that you always had to kind of find and then open. But it was like one of those little treasures that I really remember about Akdas, of just her level of encouragement and kindness, and how much she cared about people, and really how much she loved coming from a country where I'm sure she had to adjust, as many of our Iranian friends have had to do, to adjust to a new culture, to learn a language, to, you know, get to know people, to learn a new whole society. And she was just one of the great examples to me of incredibly spiritual, loving, kind, generous. You just can't even, you can't describe her. So
And
thank you.
Jack, just to inspire you more, I'm reading you something that I have on chat. This is Laudan. Akdas is here for sure.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Going to look after Deborah.
Yeah, of course she is. Yeah, of course. And Laudan, I sure appreciate you knowing that, and thank you for sharing that. It's wonderful.